Hi, I'm John F. Allen. And I'm R.J. Sullivan. And we're the Two Towers.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. I'm your co-host, John F. Allen, Tower 1.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan, Tower 2.
Today, we're here to talk about Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
And why don't you tell them where we're at, John?
Well, we are at Comic Carnival, and that is a local comic shop that both RJ and I grew up in.
More or less, yeah. Put it that way.
It's here in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the north side on Keystone Avenue. So if you guys are ever around in that area, make sure you stop in and check out the friendly folks at Comic Carnival.
Yeah. They've been around for about
40 years, because he said, yeah, we've been around since the 70s,
Wow.
which was when I started reading comic books, so if that dates me.
There you go. Okay. Well, let's get into it.
All right. RJ and I both went to a screening of the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. And I went in with mild expectations. I did not want to get caught up in the fanboy trap of comparing this to any Marvel film or anything else. I wanted it to be its own thing, so I avoided any spoilers or anything like that going in.
I had heard some. This was Friday morning, so there had been some pre-screenings. The Rotten Tomatoes score was out, and everyone was complaining about that on Facebook. But I tried to keep my expectations in check as well, and just treat it as I try to do any movie, take it on its own terms and see what I thought. Because there's certain movies I'm just gonna go see. It doesn't matter what the buzz is, and this was one of them. So we went to Showtime Cinema in Mooresville Friday morning.
Right, that's one of our sponsors. Check out the commercial at the end of the show. And make sure you go out and visit those guys. Friendly service, comfortable seating, you'll love it. And real butter topping for your popcorn. I mean, it's excellent.
He loves that part.
I do. I was pretty much in the same boat as RJ, as far as hearing about the Rotten Tomatoes score, hearing some other buzz. Now, initially the buzz was very positive on Monday before they lifted the embargo, but then when the fan screenings started to come out, then the critic screenings started to come out, then that's when all the negative buzz started to flow, and then you got the Rotten Tomato score, which, let me be clear, personally, Rotten Tomatoes means nothing to me. I mean, I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying, I'm just like RJ said, if I'm going to see a movie, I'm going to see a movie regardless of what Rotten Tomatoes or anybody else says. And there's some movies that have terrible scores on Rotten Tomatoes that I love. So, anything in media is subjective. So,
Well, should we just get into the scores and overall impressions, and then get into spoilers? What do you think?
yeah, that's good. You want to go with your score here?
Yeah, I'll start off. It's not as bad as some people are making it out to be. That said, it's not that terribly good either. I'll get into some more specifics. My biggest problems had to do with the script and the director, frankly. There was a very convoluted first hour or so that bounced all over the place. And when it finally settled down and we got to the last half hour or so, it was very enjoyable. The question of whether I would recommend it or not is kind of moot, because people were just going to see it if they're going to see it. I'm more curious about what's going to happen long term after the first few weeks, after it's had its movie run, and whether the DVDs will sustain, and what the overall impression will be from fans. I like to point to Amazing Spider-Man 2, which did terrific box office, but it didn't really sustain long term. So I'm hoping, I'm optimistic that that DC will continue with their plans and continue to make their movies. I don't think that this throws them too far off track, but I do think it threw them off track a little bit. I just don't know exactly what this means for the franchise.
Well, you know, as it turns out, their next film to be released comes out in August, which is The Suicide Squad. That's already been filmed, so that's coming out, you know.
And Wonder Woman's mostly filmed too. Yeah.
Right, and Wonder Woman's coming out in 2017. So those films are already in the can. So basically, there's no turning back on those. They did say they were scheduled. Warner Brothers said they were scheduled to begin filming on the Justice League movie at the beginning of April. So if we don't hear any pullback from that, then that means that all systems are a go. And if the box office, the global box office is any indication, we're sitting at 424.1 million. So about, you know, creeping up on that $500 million mark. So I mean, at this point, I don't think they're not going to do Justice League, or, you know, I don't think that's going to just derail them or whatnot. But like RJ said, you know, hopefully they're going to learn from the reaction and fan feedback what they may have misstepped with, and we'll get into that with the with our overall impressions.
So my tower rating, unfortunately, is 2 out of 5 towers. People are going to see it. I can't necessarily recommend it as a good movie. I think it had some interesting moments, but had a lot of problems with it, and we'll get into that in the spoiler part. But unfortunately, I don't think it quite delivered on the expectations or the promise. It had some moments, but I didn't think it was enough. That 6 months from now I'll be looking back on it as a good experience. And I don't think this is going to be a Watchmen thing. I'd love for it to be a Watchmen thing. I think that would be good for the fans, where it kind of started off not doing so well, and then people kind of came around later. So.
Yeah. My score is going to be 3 out of 5 towers. It's 1 score higher than RJ's. Basically because of 2 factors. One being the visuals. Zack Snyder does not disappoint with visuals in nearly any of his movies. I mean, they're stunning visuals to be had in basically every movie that he's put out. But that's not enough to raise my rating or to make this what I would consider more than a good film, and that's like reaching a little bit, but just because of the visuals, and also
call it a generous three towers.
Yeah, it is generous, but you know, by no means is this movie the suckfest that some people have made it out to be.
No, and I would agree
in my opinion, and I mean, and that. I mean, there are a lot more. There are redeeming things to this film, which you know, keep it from that cesspool assessment. But yeah, that's where I'm at, and that equates to a good, as you can see on the screen there.
Let's start the spoiler section. You think?
All right.
So for those that want to jump to the end, I guess we're gonna have the time up now. Is that?
Yeah, we'll have the timestamp right here, so you can check that out. If you are wanting to skip the spoilers, then you'll go to that timestamp, and you'll be good. But otherwise, continue to watch.
Probably most of you are not going to have to worry about that, I suspect. So here we are. Let's just get right into it. I am willing to go first, unless you'd like to.
Go ahead.
Okay. My problems with the movie fall on the writing, and primarily the script was a mess that relied on a lot of contrivances that did not play out well. It also relied on, and I've said this to you, the characters, most of the characters in the movie, for most of the movie, couldn't put, they were not allowed to use their common sense or logic.
Right.
And I think what frustrated me the most is that Batman is a detective, and he is known for digging deeper and looking underneath the obvious. And to watch a portrayal of Batman where he just jumps to the obvious conclusion without doing the necessary homework, especially in some situations where it just seemed obvious to me this is not the way he would behave, was very frustrating for me. Batman is, and I don't blame Ben Affleck at all. I guess I should address that first. Ben Affleck, I thought, was terrific. I think the flaws with the character had to do with script problems more than performance problems, and I would say that for all the characters. Henry Cavill delivered as best he could, given what he was handed. Same with Amy Adams. Lawrence Fishburne, I'm not quite sure what he was doing, but he's always enjoyable to watch. Jeremy Irons' Alfred was great, and I've heard a different pronunciation. Is it Gal Gadot?
I'm not actually certain. I've heard Gal Gadot, Gal Gadot.
I'm going to go with Gal Gadot because I think it sounds cool, and if it's wrong, I guess I need to apologize later. But being a big Wonder Woman fan, I thought she was a huge highlight of the movie, and because she was not involved in a lot of the setup beyond the most superficial areas, she avoided all of those problems. So script problems first. Then the direction, although I do agree Zack Snyder does create great visuals, he also had some issues in the first hour or so where he failed to establish a lot of the scene transitions properly.
Yes.
And I feel like there was like some filmmaking 101 that got missed there.
Yes, I would concur.
I don't remember that problem in Man of Steel, although I've heard people say that was a problem. I don't know. I just know that there was no. You would be in one place and then you were suddenly somewhere else with almost no gap between the
Right.
end of one thing and the beginning of another.
Right.
The fact that there were, by one person's count, 3 different dream/fantasy sequences of some sort
Right.
didn't help because they did not set these things up, I guess, to be a surprise at one point. But 3 different fantasy sequences is a lot, especially one that went on for a considerable length of time.
Right.
Um,
And that's not to say that they weren't shot well. It's just they weren't introduced well.
Yes.
To me, I would interject to say that the dream sequences in regards to the visuals were great.
Mhm.
And if you took them as snippets in and of themselves, they were pretty good. But when you drop them into the film the way in which they were, it becomes disjointed.
The actor I have skipped over is Jesse Eisenberg and his Lex Luthor. This is not going to come as a surprise to people who are listening to the buzz out there, but I got to concur with the overall impression that everyone else has. I'm going to wait and hear what happened. I did not get his interpretation of Lex Luthor at all. It just made no sense. There was no motivation presented to us. It was a performance in another movie about a different character, and I could never get my head wrapped around what it was he was trying to do. But whatever it was, it just did not work. And I don't know if it was an actor being given maybe too much leeway to do whatever they wanted, or if the script dictated certain things or didn't answer certain questions that just were not filled in. It felt like a lot of this movie ended up on the cutting room floor, and maybe when the DVD extended cut comes out, we'll get some answers. That said, that's no excuse to make a movie that's not complete, that doesn't play in the theater either. So
Right. I concur. I mean, it's like, I would have rather stayed in my seat for a half an hour if it was going to make the difference of having a better story. Because the 2.5 hours actually flew by. It wasn't like the movie's not boring. You're not going to sit there
That's
and
true.
send in the clowns or anything. It's not. It's not that kind of thing. I mean, you're in the seat for 2.5 hours watching this. You're not going to say, "Wow, this is taking a long time." But I would have been cool staying a half hour longer if it was going to
Right.
make the story better.
Right.
You know, but
Yeah,
we'll have to
exactly.
see. We'll have to see when the Blu-ray comes out whether or not that additional footage will make a difference.
So basically, the bottom line for me was I was watching a story where every contrivance possible was set up to get these two to fight each other, and you just had to ignore the fact that
I don't know though.
two people talking to each other and asking the correct questions would have cleared everything up really quick. And
There's just so much.
I hate to get into the whole how I would have done it differently, so I'm not going to. But my point is, I think there was a way to get these two battling and getting to that part without it being quite so convoluted as it was. And I would have liked to have seen maybe something like where Batman feels like Superman needs to maybe needs to be restrained and maybe tries to capture him. I couldn't buy into the whole thing. I'm going to kill him
Right.
because of this thing, which isn't entirely his fault, and anybody with half a brain should have figured out it wasn't entirely his fault. But,
Right.
You know.
Right.
And then maybe he constructs some sort of cage to try to catch him in with the kryptonite lining or something like that would have made more sense. I could have bought into that. But
Good choice.
the fact that he just chooses to commit cold-blooded murder over something where, anybody could figure out, if Superman wasn't there, they'd have destroyed the Earth that day.
Right,
And that's something
exactly.
that's totally glossed over. And
Right.
it doesn't seem like something that the character of Batman, as I understand it, would not have glossed over that point.
Right.
I could go on and on and on about other problems, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say that the script had a lot of problems, and to me, it started and ended there. Now, whether this just got rushed out too quick or not, I don't know. That's Warner Brothers' problem, but if you're going to do something this ambitious, I think you got to deliver a little bit better. I feel bad for the DC fans. I think for a movie of this magnitude, it should have been a huge home run. I think all the materials were there. It just didn't quite deliver. So we'll see what that means in the long term. And I feel like I've talked enough, so I know you have plenty to say as well.
Yes, definitely. As far as the movie, here's a couple of analogies that I have in regards to how I view the movie. Okay, so like about 1/3 of this movie I really enjoyed. Another third was mediocre, and the other third left me scratching my head saying, "What the?" I mean, it's because of the disjointedness, and as RJ had mentioned earlier, the writing and direction for this film leaves a lot to be desired. That being said, the acting I felt was on point. I think Gal Gadot did a great job as Wonder Woman, given the fact that she's an inexperienced actress and she's a newcomer to take on the role and to give it that amount of gusto and gravitas, in my opinion, was excellent. Ben Affleck as Batman could very well be one of the best Batman that we've seen on the silver screen. That being said, he had to deal with the script, which had him acting like Batman with his head up his butt most of the film, and that's unfortunate because I feel like this was a movie of missed opportunities. It's like having all of the ingredients to a kick-ass recipe that's sure to make everyone's mouth water, lined up on the table, and then you don't mix them in the right sequence or in the right quantities, and you come out with this garbled muckety muck. And you taste the highlights of the ingredients here and there, and it looks semi-appetizing throughout most of the course, but you're left feeling bland, and you're left feeling, unsatisfied and unfulfilled. And I think that kind of describes this film. a lot of the cons that I have with it, again, mirror what RJ said, as far as the direction and the editing, and how the characters acted and reacted. Batman, I've been reading Batman comics since 1975. So that's like 41 years. And honestly, Batman was a detective, okay? And he is a detective. And there were things that he did that were in the essence of a detective in the film, which were really great.
That's
But
true.
then it was like he took his head out, he took his brain out of his head and just led with emotions. Now, Batman, at his core, is emotional in the sense that it was the tragic death of his parents that led him to wage this war on crime in Gotham City. Okay, we get that part. But when you become some type of a petulant, emotional child in a 45-year-old Batman
Right.
who's been Batman for like 20 years, that kind of takes you out of the character. And I mean, it's like, okay, so why are you letting your emotions guide you to this point?
Yeah,
It's
to interject, the frustrating thing was he investigated Lex Luthor so thoroughly,
Yes.
and so much like Batman,
yes,
and he didn't apply that same diligence to the Superman situation.
That's
at
right.
all.
That's
And-
right.
And that's what was frustrating as a viewer, going, "Oh, why do you take everything skeptically with him? But Superman, you're just going to listen to what they tell you on CNN and be like, oh, that must be true." I mean, that didn't play for me at all.
Right, and I want to mention this about Man of Steel, because a lot of people have issue with the destruction in Metropolis that occurred in Man of Steel, and I get it, I understand, but I think the anger or the frustration with that is misplaced. It's misplaced against Superman as a character, as opposed to the writing. Look, if you had discovered that you knew you were different, and then you discovered you were alien, and then in the course of like maybe a couple of weeks you learned how to fly, and then the next thing you know you're thrust into a battle with people who had been bred to be warriors from the time of their birth to save a planet that you grew up on, you wouldn't have the necessary fighting skills to think outside the box and move someone necessarily out of the city, or even, while you're trying to fight someone whose skill set is higher than yours. It's like someone who's a mediocre boxer getting into the ring with someone who's a professional clout, and then you're wondering why they're getting their butts kicked. Give Superman the character some slack in Man of Steel, because people don't realize he had just discovered his powers. He just got the suit, and the next thing you know, he has to fly to Smallville and try and save everybody. And it's not like in Superman the movie back in 1978 where he's spent time in the Fortress of Solitude practicing how to use his powers, developing himself or whatnot. If that Superman had caused the kind of havoc in Metropolis in that film that occurred in Man of Steel, then yes, we would have been like, dude, seriously, you've had time to learn this, so let's give him a break.
And in spite of that, and I know you're addressing an argument that I've made with him in the past, but and I accept that. That's true. In spite of that, the contrivance in this movie is, I acknowledge that Superman was doing his best to minimize damage. Damage was caused.
Right.
What was annoying for me in this movie is that apparently, even though it should have been very clear, nobody connected those dots. The idea
Right.
of, why are you mad at Superman? He didn't come and try to destroy the city. He was trying to prevent the damage. And yet, I don't know how many times Batman says, he's a menace and he needs to be stopped and he caused this problem. No, he didn't cause the problem. In fact, if his spaceship hadn't landed and Zod and company spaceship still had, they'd have just destroyed the Earth, and that'd have been the last day of the planet.
Right.
It was just because he happened to be there that that it turned out as well as it did, although it was a terrible situation. And
Right.
if anybody can look at that and figure it out, why couldn't the people in the movie?
And there was like one of him against 3 or 4 other Kryptonians.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the sheer numbers, and then you had 2 world engines. So I mean, you know,
Right.
you're trying to, you know, you're trying to. I guess what I'm saying is that it's not the character's fault. So let's not dump on Henry Cavill and the character of Superman. Let's dump on the writers who didn't really think that
Yeah.
through. You know?
Another thing the writers didn't do, which I just want to touch upon really quick, is there's a dichotomy between Batman and Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Batman is dark and gritty, and Superman is supposed to be that symbol of hope. And I
Right.
think they missed an opportunity to present Superman that way.
Right.
The 2 or 3 times that they very quickly allow him to do anything superheroic, it's still grim and dark with the music blaring this dirge-like situation when he's like when he was rescuing the rocket that was exploding. It
Right.
felt like it didn't feel heroic, you know what I mean? It didn't feel optimistic at all, even though he had just saved a lot of people's lives.
Right, and another thing, like if you watch those Turkish airline commercials, you saw that in the visuals for that, Gotham City was dark. It was shown at nighttime.
Mhm.
Metropolis was light, shown during the day, and they even had Superman flying through the city during the day. Okay, this film did not do enough to capitalize on that. You have Gotham over here, and you have Metropolis over here. They're separated by bay. So, to me, it makes sense. You set up Gotham being where all the industrial jobs are, the factories, all that kind of stuff. It's got smog problem. It's got crime problem. You set up the white collar industry jobs over Metropolis, where you know everything's bright. So you have that contrast, and it should have been shown. It wasn't shown. And
There's a lot of telling in that.
Right, that's the problem. It's not that, you know, and that goes back to my analogy. It's not that the ingredients weren't there; they just weren't used properly. And I'm unlike RJ. I'm going to eventually do put up a video of how I would have handled the script. I won't do that here. That's not the place. This isn't the place for it. But I will say that I think that taking The Dark Knight Returns, Death of Superman, and elements from Crisis on Infinite Earths and trying to smash all of these into a movie was just too ambitious.
It was a
okay,
lot, yeah, no doubt.
and it wasn't to me the right source material to mine from. You guys out there, if you've seen Superman and Batman, Public Enemies, the animated film, which was based off the Ed McGuinness and Jeff Loeb run in Batman and Superman and Batman comic book, then that to me was source material that they should have mined. They could have used the Batman Superman animated film from the Bruce Timm era. That would have been source material that could have been mined. These things were right there, but for whatever reason they decided not to use it. So
it was I'll say, even though I considered it lacking, I will say also, it was an ambitious failure. You could see the work
yes,
on the screen. You could see that they tried.
Yes.
I mean, I could appreciate. I would most of the time I would rather see someone swing for the fences and come in short rather than just come in and completely blow it, not even try. Now I don't. You know, what's his name, David Goyer. I mean, he's done good stuff. I don't know this Chris Terrio guy. I'm talking about the 2 writers so much. David S. Goyer has a pretty solid record of writing good things, so I don't know what happened. I don't know if they just weren't given enough time to flesh it out. A lot of the problems were with the script. It did feel a little phoned in to me. It felt like they didn't think it through. But everything else I thought was very solid.
yes,
And it's just too bad it didn't quite come through. So overall, John and I were both disappointed to an extent. I think I was a little tougher on it because I am admittedly more of a Marvel fan. I didn't have as much at stake for these. I mean, I love the Superman movies, enjoy the Batman movies. I'd like to see more of my Superman on the screen, and I think that's probably what disappointed me the most. But being a Wonder Woman fan, she's the one person that came out mostly unscathed, and I will take that. That is where that's where my two towers went, is towards Wonder Woman. So I'm very happy with that part of it. John?
Well, I will say that Wonder Woman and Ben Affleck as Batman acting, not the writing, were the highlights of the film for me. And I also liked the fact that they addressed the issues of Man of Steel, and that Henry Cavill tried. I mean, he tried with what he worked with. Look, I like Henry Cavill as Superman. I think he has excellent potential. He meets most of the marks of all of the great Supermen from the past. It's just he hasn't been given the material, the proper direction. And I think if he had that, he'd be an excellent Superman, as opposed to just a passing Superman, which is not necessarily his fault. So, with that being said, I'm looking forward to the Wonder Woman film coming out next year, and I'm looking forward to a solo Batman film with Ben Affleck as the director, which I've heard is coming. So, those things I'm really looking forward to. I'm still looking forward to Justice League movie. I'm still looking forward to these movies, and I'm looking forward to Aquaman. I mean, they had a cameo with Jason Momoa as Aquaman. He looked good. It's going to take people's mindset away from the Super Friends version of Aquaman, which is what people like to joke about, and make the character more serious as he has been in more modern tellings. So I'm interested to see what Momoa does with Aquaman. I wasn't really particularly happy with the casting for The Flash. We'll have to see what this kid does, but he's not Barry Allen that I'm seeing.
Right. So, I guess we're going to have lots of smaller episodes along with this. I know that John is going to do a Easter egg little program. We're also going to be at That Book Place and talking to a few authors there. So look for some 5 to 10 minute clips, little mini episodes where we introduce you to some of our favorite local authors and give them a chance to tell you about their work while we're there at the event. I'm looking forward to getting those filmed next week. So other than that, you want to talk about some of your episodes coming up, and then we can wrap up, I guess.
I will be airing some episodes that are recaps of the shows, such as Supergirl, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Arrow, and The Flash, and DC's Legends of Tomorrow throughout the week, and wrapping up at the end of their seasons, which is sometime in May, I do believe, early to mid-May. So be on the lookout for those. There'll be some other videos that will be out too. If you're a jazz fan, I'll be uploading some jazz reviews for some jazz albums that'll be coming out or that are already out. So be on the lookout for those as well. The next movie review we do will be the X-Men Apocalypse. So you want to make sure that you're looking out for that one when the movie drops. We'll have plenty to say about that one too.
Most likely.
So looks like it's going to be a fun summer at least.
You bet.
All right, well that about wraps it up for this episode. This is the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice review from the Two Towers Talk Show. If you want to check me out, you can check me out at johnfallenwriter.com. You'll be able to get to me for Facebook, Twitter. It's all there on my website.
Right, same here. rjsullivanfiction.com. I think I called the tab Stock RJ or something silly like that, but you'll find all my other links there. So certainly welcome any comments or questions or anybody that wants to check out what I'm doing. So.
All right, and also check out twotowerstalkshow.wordpress.com. That's our companion blog website, which has a lot of news items and other things on it. It also has some upcoming events for the Two Towers, so you want to check that out. And I want to take one last final moment to thank Comic Carnival for letting us tape our show here at their store. This is the store is very formative in both myself and RJ's lives coming up as comic book readers.
It's been bringing back lots of memories.
So
that's for sure.
yeah,
I haven't been here for a while. So
very nostalgic, and it's like coming back home in a sense. So
yeah.
Definitely kudos to them for allowing us here in their store. We really appreciate it, and we really had fun here. So until next time.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies. Be sure to check out our advertising partner, DC and Marvel, a universal alliance. They are a friendly Facebook community who offer digital comic book giveaways, games, tournaments, and viewing parties. Follow the link below and give them a look. You'll be glad you did.